ProjectUX, the UX show for startups. 4 UXperts break down a product's interactions, interface, and usability. Today, our esteemed UXpert panel includes Bibana Nunes, Information Architect and UX e-commerce manager for Adidas Mexico.
It's about having the right content in the appropriate moment.
Spool, founder of UIE, co-founder of Center, the premier school for user experience design, and speaker extraordinaire.
None of this sort of up and down in the menu tree, what we call pogo sticking. None of that.
Debra Gelman, AVP Digital Design and UX for AT&T and author of Design for Kids.
Make sure that they understand the implications of what it is they're seeing so that value can be communicated.
And Alan Cooper, software alchemist, founder of Cooper, father of Visual Basic, inventor of personas, and author.
Don't say we do the magic, say here's the magic, we give it to you. And they'll come back and say, oh, give me more, I like this.
Together, we'll guide the startup to solutions for their biggest UX problems.
One of the first questions we always get concerns privacy.
You just look at what Facebook does around privacy and do the exact opposite. Exactly.
Hey everybody, welcome to a special live recording of ProjectUX at Big Design in Addison, Texas, Big Design's 10th anniversary. We set the stage for our startup. They are noise aware, and from noise aware we have Garrett. So noise aware makes noise monitoring and alarming products for Airbnb. Beyond that, can you give us your 30-second pitch?
NoiseAware is a noise monitoring company, and we help property managers and short-term rental hosts that use platforms like Airbnb and HomeAway to prevent costly noise complaints and potentially much larger property damage issues that spawn from parties that go unmonitored. So our solution entails a piece of hardware, a web application, and our proprietary noise risk score algorithm that we use to measure and report noise back to the customer. And using those things, we give our customers the power of early awareness, whereas before, the property managers could only hear about noise issues either the day after or when they get that call from the neighbor and it's already come through the police and it's too late.
Excellent, thanks. Well, we're gonna watch a little demo here, and everybody can see it. We'll watch it down here, and take it away, Garrett.
At NoiseAware, we have started working on an overhaul redesign of our product, taking in everything that we know about our customers, taking in all the feedback that we have, using the customers that we have for validation. We're working to build a better and better product, knowing what we know after being over a year in business now and having great customers. We do all of our design based on personas, and so there is a class of our customer that we think really engages with our product on mobile, and so we want to give them a native experience. Our 2 key use cases, like I said, setting up a sensor and then resolving a noise situation. I'm going to do a flow that walks us through both of those use cases. If you're a new customer, the first thing you're going to do is create an account. You give us some basic information on yourself, as well as on your company. And then as a first-time user, you're immediately directed to add your first property onto our system. The next step in setting up a property is answering a few easy questions: max occupancy, the frequency of neighbor complaints at that property, as well as your alerting preference, just so that we get a good gauge of what your risk tolerance is for that specific property. And then based on that, we can give you really good default threshold and notification settings. You can add Wi-Fi credentials to the property now to simplify the sensor setup process later. And lastly, if you are a power user and you want to go in and tweak your threshold settings and see what effect that has on how we display risk to you, you can do that through the advanced settings on every property. So after you've completed that, now you've set up your property, but you're not yet collecting any data at that property. So the first thing we need to do is set up a sensor at that property. So our new outdoor SKUs will be relaying data through our indoor units. So the first thing you need to do on every property is set up an indoor unit before you can set up any of our outdoor units. So give us an appropriate nickname for the sensor so that we can label it in the software, and confirm that you've got the correct Wi-Fi credentials. And now the next thing that we need to do is the mobile app has to teach the Wi-Fi credentials to our sensor. And the way we do that is the mobile app will play a modulated audio file that the sensor will listen to, decode, and then use those credentials to attempt to access the Wi-Fi. And that's our assurance to the customer that the device is working, right? Because it's listening. After you hit calibrate, you get the confirmation that the sensor and our servers are transmitting data properly. And then the last task that we ask of the user is to take a photograph of the installation location. So after you complete that, this is the properties card, which is starting to collect data from that indoor sensor. The next step would be repeating the process for an outdoor sensor. So our second use case is responding to a high-risk event that's occurring at one of your properties. So this is your basic risk dashboard. This is the launch screen of the app if you're logged in. And on this one, we've got 20 of 20 properties monitored. And this little wheel chart gives you a breakdown of 2 of these properties are currently in high risk. So if you hit this high risk button, it'll take you to a list view of the properties with an active filter to only show you the properties that are currently in high risk status. So Peaceful Property is currently our highest risk situation. We have a current reservation for 3 guests, and the highest risk data that's contributing to the risk of the property is displayed here. We've got 84 noise risk score outdoors, and that wheel is full to show us that that's above our allowable limit at that property for outdoor noise for the time that it currently is. So if you hit into that property card, now it'll slide up the property's information to give you a little bit more context. It also opens up the options for you to text the guest, give the guest a phone call, open up the property's event log so that you have a running history of not only user actions at the property, but guest actions at the property and the data that comes through the property, and then also adjusting the property's settings. We have 3 spots here to display data. Our featured slot at the top will show the highest risk data, and then below that, we've got the other 2 data streams that we collect. So based on this, our user says, all right, I definitely need to text this guest and let them know that they're being a little bit too loud and try to mitigate the risk of that noise complaint. So they click here and it launches an SMS to the guest with pre-filled copy that's attached to their account. So they fire that off to the guest. And now, if you go into the property's event log, you'll see that you have the record of the user texting the guest, and then also so that his entire team, because usually our customers have a remote customer service team that manages our product, his entire team can see that the guest has been texted. And in addition to that, the user went in and wrote a note that says about the response from the guest. So there's a little bit of clarity on what the guest's reaction was to that text message.
So first of all, round of applause for Garrett and his presentation. Thank you. All right, now our panel of UXperts will begin to eviscerate him. So let's just start there. Open-ended questions. What are your first thoughts, feelings, violent reactions?
You had said, Garrett, that you had designed to personas.
Yes.
Not to kiss up to Mr. Cooper here, but I'm a firm believer in personas, and I loved hearing that.
Okay, great.
What's not coming through to me in the design that you're showing me is what that persona's behaviors are, what that current user journey looks like without noise aware, and how you've used that behavioral information to come up with this design.
We are
Brutal.
really one of the only solutions in this space. So currently, our customers and the personas that we design for, they have no peace of mind without our product. Right now, the current journey of the user that as it reacts to noise issues is almost non-existent. They trust the customer, they know they're taking on risk, and then if there is an issue, they have to deal with it retroactively. The majority of our customers, the personas, we have the owner-operator types. They're essentially the the people that have a couple of properties. They do this potentially as a side hobby, or it's, a husband and wife that like to manage together. Then we have a lot of professional managers. And the professional managers, they use us as an acquisition tool because the homeowners really don't want to hand over the keys to their biggest asset to somebody who isn't going to be responsible and be able to proactively manage their property.
So my husband and I have a rental property in Philadelphia. We live in Dallas, Texas. We work with a management company, but it's a guy named Eddie Kratchman, and he sends us a bill every month for management. This would be something that would be really interesting to me, but I would have to get on a plane, or I'd have to entrust Eddie Kratchman to go into my apartment, right? And install the device. What solution does this provide for people, like you had mentioned, with 20-some properties that are all across the country, the globe? How is that represented here, that particular use case?
The driving factors behind this design is we ask, what is the basic information that the user wants to see at every screen, and how do we give that to him in as few interactions with the mobile application? So someone that has 20 properties, we are actively sending notifications for things that we feel like are such a problem that the property manager really needs to know about it and really needs to react to it instantaneously. Everything else, the product that we provide is peace of mind.
Have you watched users go through the sensor setup process?
Not on this iteration of the product.
Because that setup process, as you demoed it, looks like a setup process that only someone who demos it can do.
So could you tell us a little bit about what makes you feel like that?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of little sort of red flags that came up. One was the fact that there's a certain order you have to do things, and the way you determine that order is you gray stuff out, but you don't give any explanation as to why something is grayed out. So if I'm holding an indoor sensor, I'm going to be going, why won't it let me set up my indoor sensor? Am I not allowed to have an indoor sensor? Or outdoor sensor, or whatever it is that comes second. And so that jumped out at me. And then there's a screen in there that has 2 paragraphs of text that looked like a book chapter. And that's probably going to be difficult for folks to read. And it's sort of assuming a sophistication level, particularly around setting the thresholds for which they have absolutely no history or knowledge as to how to pick those thresholds. So it feels to me like you would learn a lot by watching people do that, and I could be completely wrong, and everyone would be able to set this up, but my gut tells me that I am not.
I think that's a great comment, and we are absolutely planning on taking this out for user research and testing as soon as possible.
What's stopping you?
Well, so firstly, this was presented to our team internally last week. I have some iterations to do based on their comments that aren't in the product yet. So that'll happen first, and then we're going out as soon as possible.
So I'm wondering if going forward, you could actually do the testing as you're designing it, instead of waiting until you present it to your internal folks and then decide.
I have to say, I have stayed in Airbnbs, but I don't rent one out myself. And so I'm unaware of this problem. And when I first heard this, the one-sentence description, I thought, well, who needs that? And what you've done is exactly the advice that I would give to an entrepreneur, which is you've looked at a problem that people don't see as a problem, and you've seen it as larger in scope. And so I think this is a really good thing. And as you're describing this situation and how it's used, I can totally see how property owners would want something like this, and how property managers would need something like this. So the thing that comes to my mind is this is enabling eavesdropping. Your responsibility is to assure people that they're not being eavesdropped on. And I know you're working on Rev 2 now. I guarantee you that Rev 3 is going to have a camera. You see? You know it. See,
you actually don't.
He's already raising
You
the
actually
ref.
don't know how this works, do you? Because it doesn't do eavesdropping.
It measures noise.
It measures pressure.
Yeah.
But that's a problem, right?
Alan didn't know that.
Well,
Right.
That's
Yeah.
And neither does a property owner.
Yes.
Well, then let me say this, that yes, you're right. I don't know how it works. I pride myself on my ignorance here. So I'm terrified of eavesdropping. And so here's what I think you need to do is you need to say, hi, my name is Garrett. I have a product to sell you. It doesn't eavesdrop.
Yeah.
The admin needs to know that actually you're not recording stuff. You're just recording pressure ratings. But the guest, the first time they get that text that says you're making too much noise, what's that guest experience like?
First of all, you guys are spot on some of the challenges that we face. One of the first questions we always get concerns privacy. And so if you have any recommendations about how to drill into the market and our customers that our solution is 100% privacy safe, I'm all ears, because it is. We just monitor, like you said, pressure levels.
Well, you just look at what Facebook does around privacy and do the exact opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a minute. Now, now I thought, call me crazy, but the way a microphone, the way a microphone works is it measures sound pressure. It tracks analog sound pressure. So what the hell is the difference?
I'm going to turn it over to the expert.
The difference comes in the noise risk score algorithm that runs onboard the device.
The NRS.
So what you're saying
Exactly.
is it is a microphone, I just have to trust it. So when
Yes.
the camera is in Rev 3, you just kind of blur out the sex acts.
So I have a question for Bibana. So in your talk that you gave earlier today, one of the challenges you faced was that you had to positively affect the user experience of a giant global e-com site without actually touching the UI. So given that challenge, we face something similar here. There's a microphone in a product. There's an interface that some people get, but the guests don't get that interface. How would you approach the information architecture of said problem?
Yeah, I think one of the things, Deb mentioned it, is first understanding the entire customer journey, because I think we're looking at elements of the customer journey separately and not as a holistic system or ecosystem. So for example, you're assuming that a manager has 20 properties, but in your content simulation, you don't list 20 properties. So how does it look to have 20 properties in an app and not just one or two? So, and what happens when you get a call, you're a guest, and you get a call from your host saying that your noise level is too high? Do you get freaked out because you think you're being watched? Or how do you tell the hosts that you need to warn your guests that you're gonna be monitoring that, and without them feeling recorded?
So we have best practices that we publish on our website, and those have been learned from what our customers have been trying with our product for the past 2 years. The thing that works the best is you say, we have received a complaint from the neighbor. And so the guest doesn't know that there's a device on the property. So that's one option. The second option is a lot of our customers disclose in their rental agreement that they use noise monitoring technology, and they're trying to see, is it going to affect their booking rates? Is it going to affect their bounce rates on their properties? We are successful in a lot of markets where noise complaints have real financial consequences for the property managers.
So I went on your website, I didn't see any of that, and that is a huge value proposition, right? So where we are, again, in Philly, I know, sample size of 1, but there are noise ordinances, right? There are, and I think
Pressure ordinance.
Pressure ordinances. And I think if that, if you lead with that, or if you make that very prominent, obviously not on the admin tool, but in your marketing materials, it can be very compelling, because that's the problem statement right there.
Here's to the artists. Here's to the passionate ones. Here's to the go-getters. And here's to that guy. Find the tech career that's right for you at Dev Mountain.
So I just want to say that one thing I really, really, really don't like is designers solutionizing on somebody else's product. When that person has spent years thinking and working on the product and doing research on it, and they're just a panel of experts sitting in it. So, but I have an idea for you.
I am open to it. Let's hear it.
So why don't you create a slightly less capable version of this nice mobile app and give it to the renter?
You can call it Under Pressure.
So it's kind of a pressure drop. Yeah. So then they can see their own feedback. So when they're smashing the bathroom fixtures, they can see the pressure level go up, and then they know, gee, that's probably counterindicated. What you're doing here is you're saying that our job is to protect the property owner. And what I'm saying to you is, the way to protect the property owner is to become the renter's friend. You make that renter an ecstatic, happy person. You make them love the place that they're staying at. They won't wreck it, they won't abuse it, they won't make noise, and everybody up the food chain is happy. You make the people at the top happy, squash the little guy. So the personas that you need to develop for your organization, personas have names, and you never call them users. You call them by their names, okay?
Okay, we have names.
Eddie. Is one of them Eddie Kravitz?
Well, if it's not, it should be.
It's the renter.
The other context that you may have is that maybe these people have been partying too hard. Will they calm down with an SMS? Like, will they even listen to their phone when they get a text or even a phone call? Or what prevents them from unplugging the sensor altogether?
The existing product lives on the outlet and has a screw hole at the top, so you actually screw it through the faceplate. It helps to prevent tampering. We found that if a guest is actually interested in throwing a party, it's more likely that they're going to unplug the router than try to scour the house and find our devices. We've also only had one case of a customer that has discovered this product and realized what it is and had a negative reaction to it.
Will unplugging the router bring your system down?
Yes. Yes, but we can send disconnect notifications.
The setup still is got me a little baffled, because how do they know where to place the sensors? For installing this thing, where are the instructions? Where do they learn where to place them and how to mount them?
So for the current product, the current generation of the product, there's a quick start guide that comes with it, and then the product that exists now on the website.
And what's the medium of the quick start guide?
Nothing like this. A printout that comes in your shipment. For larger property managers, we typically provide installation if it's a lot of deal value.
Have you thought about potentially getting rid of the quick start guide and putting it all into the app, so that basically the instruction is run the app, and then the app step by step tells you what placement should be, what to do, and basically gives you all the guidance through that? Now, an experienced installer will just be able to skip through that really fast. So you want to make sure there's some sort of shortcut,
right?
Because you'll need a persona for that. But for the first-time property manager, or the low-volume property manager, having that and having them remind and looking at those elements would probably allow you to get that installation done more effectively.
You said that you had like a best practice guidance, and I think like you have all the content spread out. You have it, but you're waiting for the user to actively seek it. While if you have like the right message at the correct moment, you wouldn't have to wait for the user to actually, or the persona, to actually seek it out, because you will be showing it to them at the correct moment and will not risk them missing out some key piece of information.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me was you've got these menus of things where you have to click into the menu, do the Wi-Fi settings, then come out, click into another menu item, do the thresholds, and come out, when really it's probably a serialized flow that you want. And it's just like, okay, now it's time to put in your Wi-Fi settings, let's do that. Now it's time to set your thresholds, let's do that. And none of this sort of up and down in the menu tree. what we call pogo sticking. None of that. Because that's going to lead to error. Someone's going to skip a step. They're not going to understand that they were supposed to have done that. And then the system's not going to work, and then you're going to have a support call.
Yeah, that's a great point. And going a little deeper into installation, and if you're curious and you want to know the names of our personas, the mobile application, that's for Fran and Steve. And Fran and Steve, those will be your self-installers. So this is the product where every pain point that you just pointed out, it needs to have a solution in here. Those are the people that we expect to only interact with our product in the mobile application, because typically that's what they do today, and they self-install the product always. The new web application, which we're just getting started on some exploration and the design there, and that's for Mark. And for them, they will never do their own installations. It's always going to be provided by us. So we do have a little bit of that break point, but like you said, if there is any confusion or backstepping or pogoing that happens in installation, the customer is going to have to deal with it in the mobile application. There needs to be a solution there, and it doesn't sound like there is right now.
So what are the problems then that this release is solving that you have in the existing product?
It mostly comes in the functionality of how we display risk to the user, as well as the functionality of notifications.
Right, and can we bring up the graph again? Because there are some contrast issues there. Mm-hmm. That's going to be problematic for anyone with color blindness or some sort of vision impairment. That. Plus, what scale is this?
So this is our proprietary noise risk score. So it's a 0 to 100 scale.
Okay.
Why do you have a proprietary noise risk score?
Our algorithm, which takes into effect the velocity of change of the volume, the absolute volume, and then the duration of sustained volume, gives you a much clearer indicator of if this has been going on and it's moderately loud and it's been an hour and it's late at night, that's a good chance that your neighbor's going to be bothered by it.
So how do you correlate the decibels, which is the fine threshold, and your noise risk score? Like, where do you see that?
So we do have a conversion chart online. It's not very well used. You
know why? It's online.
Exactly. Because you set the threshold here.
Yeah.
And it's about having the right content in the appropriate moment.
Yep.
That's one scale, but there's another scale here, because this is a two-dimensional chart. What is the other scale?
So I think that contrast is giving us an issue, but you have the current time and then an hour in history indicated on the x-axis.
Okay, and then the second chart?
There's
two
devices.
That's two devices. Okay, so there's actually no historical data.
Again, this is going back to the personas. The mobile application for Fran and Steve is a resolution tool, so they're worried about solving issues in the moment. The web application is for Mark, which is more of an enterprise tool. That will be where you can go far back in history as you want, export data in whatever format you want.
But don't Fran and Steve want to know if this is louder than normal? Where's normal on this chart?
Right.
So that's an incredibly difficult thing. I mean, I'm learning so much more about acoustics than I ever thought I would know on a regular basis.
So let's talk about acoustics, because unlike Alan, I know something about acoustics. This thing plugs directly into a socket, and actually the noise is going to probably be loudest at the ceiling level if you want to detect noise issues, right? So how does the installer know what thresholds to set, and how do these folks know whether this is working within normal? And maybe thresholds should not be set as an absolute number in the system, but instead be sampled over time. Alan's got a product idea.
Why not record the owner when they're home for a month and establish their noises as a baseline?
Not record.
Not
right?
record. No, we're recording just the pressure.
Just the pressure.
And but then use that as the baseline.
But that then, it wouldn't be easy to install. It would take like a long time to establish what's normal for each person.
If there were a sound pressure recorder in my house, and it graphed the sound pressure that I generated over a couple of weeks, and then showed that to me on a chart. And everything else that my tenants then did were mapped against that. I would say, well, look, here they're louder than me, here they're quieter than me.
Yeah, and it's basically just a training process. And they don't have the sensor one day, and then the next day they have the sensor, and then for some period of time the sensor's in training. So that first set of guests may or may not be as accurately measured, and the system may be a little bit more sensitive, and you know, this is what machine learning is for. But I think giving some sort of notion of expectation, and to me, that is probably more valuable than the red circle. Can we see the red circle again? What's intriguing to me is that looks more like a progress indicator than like shields up, red alert. I'm wondering, I'm not sure that that's an optimal visualization of something that indicates a problem. To me, it indicates completion.
This has been really incredible, guys. I think we've delved a lot. We've talked a little bit about the information architecture, how it's architected when you set it up. We've talked about accessibility. We've talked about a little bit about the visual design. I think we kind of left it alone because, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it looks like a nice product. Tell us the one single most important thing. It could be something we already talked about. Single most important thing to you, that one takeaway that you want them to walk away with tonight.
I would spend time watching property managers and property owners interacting with the whole product. Just be there for the installation, but don't just watch. Be there for the monitoring, the setup. Get that exposure to that, and just be really immersed in all the different ways you can do that.
Excellent. Bibana.
Yeah, I think would be to not have all messages spread out, especially if they're important to the entire process. And this will probably come out by being immersive in their experience, but make sure you place the correct message at the right time.
Awesome. Thank you. Alan.
I'm bothered by this proprietary score. I think that what you can do is if you say, okay, you're at 80 decibels, but our proprietary algorithm says that this is not an issue for you. Okay, that sounds to me less threatening, more mysterious, more open, more revealing of your process than saying our score says don't worry. These aren't the droids you're looking for. You see, you want to be forthcoming. You want whoever's using your system. I mean, they're professionals, right? So you want them to feel like they're in charge and they're informed and they know what's going on. And so you don't want to be mysterious. And be willing to give all of your intelligence to them. Don't hold back. Don't make it a mystery. Don't say we do the magic. Say here's the magic. We give it to you, and they'll come back and say, oh, give me more. I like this, because then you gain trust rather than dependency, and that's a much better relationship to have with the people who spend money on your product.
Yeah.
I would say continually reinforcing the value proposition, right? You're gonna get fined, dude. You're all the way at the end of your progress meter. You're gonna something's gonna happen. Something's gonna come down, right? Make sure that they understand the implications of what it is they're seeing, so that value can be communicated, and in as much as possible, to Bibby's point about the messaging, reflect, what does it mean for me? What does it mean for me? These are numbers. At the end of the day, Fran and Steve, you're going to lose your renter's license, you're going to get fined, oh, you're doing great, you're going to get a great rating on. Talk about that, make that part of the experience.
I came here tonight expecting to hear great advice and find opportunities to improve this product, and I got that in spades, so thank you guys all so much.
If you take a look at each of the points that we brought up and how we approached each of the problems, it had direct ramifications to a human. And I think you've done a pretty good job of bringing in the humans, thinking about them, Fran and Eddie and Steve and Bob and Ted and Alice. But we have to give these to real people and see them in their environment. Otherwise, we're not UX designers, we're MyX designers. So for each of you out there using your products, please find opportunities to inject more humans in your process. I thank you all for being here. Celebrate Big Design, 10 years. Give a round of applause to our UXperts, please.
And a big one for Garrett and NoiseAware. All right. Thank you all for coming, and good night.